Canary by Cloud9 and 3/4. Chapter 23. Distractions. This is the beginning of your chat with Mina Ashido. Mina Ashido changed her name to Alien Queen. Midoriya Izuku. Thank you. Alien Queen changed your name to Canary. Alien Queen. Excuse me? Alien Queen. And did you decide to just ignore this little detail while I rambled on about Canary during dance class and you just sit idly by? Alien Queen. Good job on the sports festival, by the way. You totally killed it. Alien Queen. Or should I say, Alien Queen, rocked it! Alien Queen. Please don't send Sarah to murder me. Alien Queen. That bird is terrifying. Alien Queen changed her name to Pinky. Pinky. Hey, you not coming to dance class today? Pinky. I guess I'll just have to see you tomorrow then. The others are so totally dying to talk to you. Pinky. Where are you? Pinky. Answer me! Pinky. I see you over there. Pinky. I see you. Check your phone. Don't you ignore me. Pinky. Okay, what are you doing? Pinky. I saw you and Purple Raven go into the support labs. Pinky. Chaka won't tell me anything. Pinky. I rang up the radio station, but I didn't get through. Pinky. Sad violin music. Pinky. Hey, wait! Didn't you once say you could play the violin? Pinky. Oh my god, that would be so cool in dance! Pinky. You better not be ghosting me! Pinky. If you don't turn up to dance today, you're in so much trouble, mister! Pinky. Fine, don't then! Pinky changed your name to Rude! Pinky. Last chance to turn up to dance before I delete your number! Pinky. I'm kidding! Pinky. I would never do that. Rude! I'm so sorry! Pinky. You better be! Pinky. I had to fight autocorrect to get the hang of capitalism! Pinky. That's not the right word to use there, is it? Pinky. Anyway, that's how angry I am! Rude! I swear I didn't ignore you on purpose! Pinky. I'm standing in dance, waiting for you, so you better show up! Rude! I will, I promise! Rude! I just had to fix the notifications on my phone so it would stop attacking me all day and I must have messed yours up somehow. Rude! Please believe me! Pinky. Fine! Pinky changed your name to Canary. Pinky. You have 5 minutes to turn up the dance before I change your name to something worse! Canary. I'm running! Pinky. You better! Midoriya actually did run. Siren thought that was funny though because it meant she could fly faster beside him. The last week had been extremely busy for Midoriya, and Shinzo too. In between lessons, they had hurried over to the support class in a desperate bid to put together the support items they wanted and needed for their hero costumes. Fortunately, neither of them required anything all too flashy for the costumes themselves, and so less work had to be put into it for now. The whole idea of making a hero costume still felt surreal to Midoriya, and probably to Shinzo too, even if he tried not to show how excited it was. They hadn't submitted official hero names yet or anything. Apparently, they couldn't do that until they were enrolled officially in the hero course. But it didn't matter to Midoriya. He would be Canary no matter what. His whole body felt lighter as he thought about what tomorrow would bring. Him and Shinzo had been given their schedule for the week ahead only a couple of days ago, but Midoriya couldn't help but read it over and over again. On Monday, the two of them would be at UA under the supervision of the teachers of UA whenever they had the time. Midoriya knew it was bound to be difficult, probably consisting of a full-day workout, testing the limits of both their quirks before dragging their sorry bodies home. But that didn't make him feel any less excited. They'd spend the next 5 days under the tutelage of one teacher per day, with the exception of President Mike, who had them on both Tuesday and Thursday. But that was probably because it made it easier for Midoriya to head straight to the radio station in the evening, considering he was already there. When Aozora heard the news, she became rather excited over the prospect of having Canary in for more hours, or even slotting Shinso into the official Canary's hour, if he felt like it. Shinso, however, was more looking forward to Wednesday, which was Eraserhead's Day. He kept denying he'd become a fan, but Midoriya knew better. With all the thoughts of the coming week buzzing through his mind, Midoriya reached the outside of the dance studio in seemingly no time at all. Panting, he came to a halt, tightening his grip on his guitar's case. He would have taken his violin if he'd seen Mina's messages earlier, but he'd only noticed them once he was about halfway to the dance studio, scrolling absent-mindedly through his phone. "Don't cause too much of a fuss, Siren," Midoriya warned. Then, after catching his breath, he pulled open the door and hurried inside. He could hear the distant sound of the scuffing of shoes against the dance floor, a cheerful, chattering voice that could only belong to Mina, or perhaps Megumi. She was just as talkative. One of the light bulbs was broken. Its flickering light filled the corridor as Midoriya walked hesitantly towards the door that led to the room where his dance class was held. He wasn't so sure why he felt so nervous as he clutched the door handle and let it cautiously creak open. But he could feel his heart thumping frantically, threatening to burst free of the prison that was his ribcage. His hands were shaking as he pushed the door open a little further, his eyes settling on the people he was so used to spending his weekends with. Perhaps he was frightened of what they'd think of him, how they'd react to being kept in the dark. That was one of the reasons why he'd put off going back to dance after the sports festival. They didn't see him at first. He tiptoed in and hurried to his usual seat in the corner of the room beside Miss Kita. Then Mina spotted him. "Canary!" she cried. Midoriya winced as the rest of the class immediately stopped what they were doing to stare at him. He gave open his mouth to say, "Hi," or something, but all he got was an unsatisfying squeak. He flushed red and ended up just feebly waving. "I told you he hadn't given up on us!" Mina exclaimed happily, jumping up and down gleefully before catching a glimpse of the little green bird and jumping back a little in legitimate fear. "And you brought your bird! Great!" Siren chirped at her innocently from Midoriya's shoulder, as if she hadn't attacked her on live television during Mina's match against Kona. "How lovely to see you again, Izuku," Miss Kita sighed, her hand resting over her stomach as she grinned at him. She couldn't have been far from having her baby now. She looked about ready to burst. "I'm assuming you've recovered after the sports festival now?" Midoriya smiled and nodded, both hands clutching the handle of his instrument's case in front of him. After punching rocks in Katan's direction during the final, he developed cuts and bruises all over his knuckles. In the heat of the moment, the pain barely registered in him. But it had been over a week now. Barely any indication of the injury remained. Speaking of which, that was something else Midoriya had recently added to his hero costume. A sort of mouth guard. There had been a killer bruise on his jaw after Bakugo had punched him there. It was the only injury that Recovery Girl really healed for him, considering how tired he was. "I heard you singing!" Megumi exclaimed, waving her arms about in excitement. "On the radio and in the sports festival. Oh my god, you were so cool! How come you never told us any of this before?" Midoriya backed up a little, tensing as he held his guitar closer to his chest. He tried to explain that he simply couldn't, but, well, he couldn't even do it then. It was so frustrating. He didn't feel in control. His throat would close up without a moment's notice sometimes. No matter how much he wanted to speak, sometimes he just couldn't. It was like Nezu had said, it's harder to speak to people who have, for so long, known you as the kid without a voice. Change was hard. "You know, I should have realized it was you," said Kasumi. She glanced at Midoriya in the mirror unsurely as she continued her stretches. I just haven't heard your voice in such a long time. I sort of forgot what it sounded like. What she said, added Yuto, pointing his thumb at her after a moment's hesitation. Midoriya didn't trust himself to reply without cracking all over the place or stuttering so much that they could barely understand. He gave in to the silence, put his guitar on the floor, and signed to his dance teacher so she could translate. She faltered a little before explaining, "My voice is unreliable. I'm sorry, but I don't seem to be able to speak to you today." Megumi seemed a little lost. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You have selective muteness, do you not?" recalled Mika as she did her hair up into a tight bun. Midoriya nodded, focusing his gaze on Siren, who was now perched on top of his guitar case, staring back at him with as worried an expression as a bird could convey. "We understand that it might take a while for you to overcome those barriers," Mika continued, glaring at Megumi as a warning that she was unintentionally being a little rude. Megumi wavered. "Oh, right, yeah. Of course, I'm sorry." Midoriya gave them a nervous smile as he let his shoulders relax a little, hoping they would understand. "Are you going to dance with us today?" Mina questioned, changing the subject to Midoriya's relief. "You need to show me how you use those awesome moves against the guys in the festival!" Midoriya blinked at her for a moment before quickly undoing his guitar case and holding up the slightly scorched instrument for them all to see. "Oh, yay!" Megumi exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. "It's been too long since we last had you play for us." He sat down on the bench, fingers brushing across the burnt patches of the wood of his instrument before he began tuning it as quietly as he could. Usually, at this point, his dance mates would get back to their stretching, waiting for Midoriya to finish up. But this time, they were far more transfixed on him than anything else, as if they were trying to match Canary with the quiet little Izuku they had known for so long. His guitar was quite out of tune. He hadn't had the time to use it for a while. Eventually, Kasumi looked away from Midoriya, and the little bird perched on the end of his guitar and turned back to her teacher, bringing the entire class back to reality along with her. Miss Kita?" she started, clearing her throat. "At school, we've been looking at incorporating quirks into our dances. What do you think about mine?" Midoriya knew about Kasumi's quirk too, and probably more, but he didn't mention it. They'd talked about it long ago, and Midoriya remembers quirk details well. In fact, now he thinks about it, all these facts and figures that stick so well in his head might be a hidden aspect of his quirk. That's an interesting thought. In terms of remembering lyrics, that is. Perhaps he retains information so well because his quirk needs him to remember the lines to specific songs. Although, often the lyrics don't come to him until the music begins and he starts singing, but maybe that's because Miss Kita had stopped talking, and everyone was staring at him again. "What?" fell from his mouth at a very low volume. He hadn't even processed saying it. "You were bumbling!" Mina grinned. The blackness of her eyes made her grin a little scary. Well, Midoriya had been exposed to all sorts of scary grins, and Mina's didn't even beat Shinso's, let alone Aozora's. But that really isn't an important thing to be thinking about at the moment. "You're still doing it!" she laughed. Midoriya flushed red. He wasn't used to this. The attention, the talking, mumbling was certainly new. He'd mouthed his thoughts before, even signed them, but not said them out loud. Mrs. Kita cleared her throat to continue her conversation with Kasumi, gratefully pulling at least her gaze away from Midoriya. "Try to pull your mist around yourself. It's a delicate phenomenon, so move as such. Perhaps you could follow Mika's lead. She has a style which fits that well." Kasumi smiled thinly. She never liked following in someone else's footsteps. "May I use my quirk here?" she questioned after a moment's thought. The dance teacher grinned widely and nodded. She'd never been too strict with those kinds of rules. "Go on, Izuku. You can start playing whenever you like." Midoriya blinked and refocused on the fact that he was supposed to be playing his guitar. But what to play? Something useful for Kasumi. She was the only one who was wholeheartedly serious in dance. Mina gasped loudly when he started playing it. "Oh my god! Is this the Rains in Africa one? I can never get the
lyrics! English is so darn difficult in music sometimes.
Yes, I love this song! Megumi squealed, clapping as she hurried to the edge of the dance floor. She pulled Mina along with her, leaving Mika to dance with Yuto in the middle and for Kasumi to watch irritably from behind, forming a veil of mist around her as she began to move. The song was meaningful for Kasumi, yes. Midoriya was getting rather good at finding adequate meanings within music. However, tempo was still something he had to work on. It was an issue he came across in the sports festival too, specifically in Todoroki's fight. The song he chose there was just a little too slow. He found himself moving as slow as the music did. Whether that was a legitimate side effect of his quirk, or just a habit he picked up from dance, he didn't know for sure. That was the biggest problem he had with sleeping songs. Nearly all of them were too slow and mellow, or took too long to reach the chorus, and thus the power. This song, however, was a little too fast and upbeat for the style that Kasumi wanted. She didn't seem to mind, though. Perhaps Midoriya was just overthinking things as per usual. He felt himself humming the tune of the song alongside his guitar playing. Miss Kita smiled fondly at him before turning back to her dancers. The lyrics were right there on the tip of his tongue. The moonlit wings reflect the stars that guide me towards salvation. Mina and Megumi were having a whale of a time, giggling and trying to trip each other over in time to the beat. Mika, like always, simply slipped into the music effortlessly, coordinating her movements with Yuto extraordinarily well despite his lack of self-confidence. At least it was better than Midoriya's. Then there was Kasumi, who certainly took the spotlight. She had some control over her mist as it curls around her like fabric, silks defying the law of gravity. Thinking of which, what if he brought someone like Uraraka to today's class? Or Jiro, or Shinso? Oh my god, Ino would be hilarious! Todoroki would have no idea what he was doing. He often didn't. A smile stretched across his face at the thought as he reached the chorus of the song, the tune still falling subconsciously from his lips. Although, if he dragged them to dance, they'd be here with Mina. Not that Mina wasn't nice! Midoriya didn't feel as close to her as he did with the others. Midoriya was happy to spend time with her occasionally. He certainly wouldn't deny the fact that she was his friend. But she was just a little too loud and energetic. Didn't really think about what she was saying before it let out of her mouth. I bless the rains down in Africa. Speaking of that exact problem, Mina and Megumi had stopped trying to trip each other over, mainly because they were focusing too much on the fact that Midoriya was singing, and Siren was too. But he hadn't realized it yet. He was too lost in thought strumming the chords through muscle memory more than a conscious attempt. He learned this song in guitar lessons ages ago. It was probably why it came to mind so easily. Mina cried out in surprise as she tripped over her own shoelace and Megumi burst into laughter. She managed to catch herself, though, falling into one of her favorite breakdancing moves, which most certainly didn't match the song. But it wasn't as though she seemed to care much. Kasumi rolled her eyes at them, drawing back in some of the mist that she'd lost to the air in a brief lapse of concentration. The whole room was rather humid now because of it. But no one seemed to pay much attention to the problem, even though the mirrors had started to fog up, and a layer of Kasumi's water vapor had collected on the ceiling like clouds. Before the next verse started, Midoriya's guitar playing faded, slowing to a halt. The dancers each turned and frowned at him in confusion. Are you alright, Izuku? Questioned Mika. A droplet of water fell onto her nose. She jumped back in surprise and looked up. That wasn't Kasumi's mist. They were clouds. Real gray storm clouds, shifting and churning above them. Siren tweeted at him, not realizing anything was wrong at all. But everyone else did. Kasumi, is that your quirk? Yuto breathed. Midoriya shrank back, clutching the fret of his guitar nervously as he watched the occasional weirdly warm raindrop fall from the ceiling. Oh my god, what would have happened if I kept going until the second chorus? Midoriya's mind screamed. He could have flooded the place. What if he'd sung something else? What if he hadn't considered what power it would give, only for it to be far worse than a bit of water? It was then when a profound realization washed over Midoriya, something which hung heavy in his heart even when he walked home, not long later at the end of the lesson. When the windows had been opened and the clouds had faded with surprisingly no withstanding water damage to the building. There were some songs he could never sing.
I can't believe we actually managed to get here,
Shinso whispered as he gazed down at his hero costume and the support item they'd spent all of last week designing with Hatsume. He had a hero costume! Midoriya beamed at him, stroking Siren gingerly. Shinso tucked his feather necklace under the padded purple and black top of his hero costume.
Did I ever say thank you?
Midoriya blinked. You didn't have to.
No, I really do,
he responded.
All I ever did for you was talk to you. And you just got me a ticket onto one of the best hero courses in the country.
Well, no one else talked to me,
Midoriya pouted, clearly confused by Shinso's words.
And if you hadn't talked to me, I wouldn't have been able to talk to anyone else, and I never would have found my quirk, and I never would have been here anyway. I suppose it was a joint effort. Shinso was still pretty convinced he didn't do much to help, but he knew he wouldn't be able to convince Midoriya otherwise.
Come on then, he insisted. The teachers are waiting for us outside.
The smile returned to Midoriya's expression in full force as he leapt off the bench he was perched on,
Tossing Siren into the air in the process, and practically skipped out of the changing room behind Shinso. They had been instructed to get changed into the hero costumes the two of them had been designing all last week, and then make their way out to a green to the side of the main school. Shinso wasn't sure what emotion to feel when he saw President Mike and Eraserhead standing there waiting for them, so he opted for suppressing all of them instead.
Yeah!
President Mike yelled at the top of his lungs, scaring a number of birds away from the trees a short distance away. Siren didn't seem bothered. Neither did Midoriya, who usually flinched at the slightest raise in volume. Shinso supposed he'd grown used to President Mike's outbursts.
We're really at the starting line now! Look at those hero costumes!
Volume.
Eraserhead groaned to his fellow hero as Shinso and Midoriya came to a halt before them. I'm gonna be real sad when you two leave my class, President Mike admitted.
I'm just happy you'll still be in my English lessons!
He shot Midoriya a look.
You better be in my English lessons!
Midoriya just grinned sheepishly and shrugged. He had just about as much of an idea of what was going on as Shinso did.
They won't necessarily be moving yet.
Eraserhead snapped. Midoriya's smile didn't waver. From all the stories that he and Shinso had heard from their Class 1A friends, they knew Eraserhead was strict, expected the best, but was also well known for his logical ruses. However, it was sometimes hard to tell the difference between his sincerity and just the lie to get them more motivated. Best to treat all threats as far from empty as to avoid the worst possibility.
Today is about assessing your baseline skills.
Shinso's favorite hero, Eraserhead, continued.
Both of you have powerful quirks, but there will be times where you won't be able to use them. We're going to do a basic fitness test.
He tossed a softball at Midoriya. Shinso caught it before it could hit him in the face.
I did the same thing with my hero course students. Except they were allowed to use their quirks. The only reason why you won't be using yours is because Shinso's has no physical usage here at Midoriya. I've been told yours has a limit.
As Shinso tossed the softball between his hands, Midoriya nodded, blushing.
We want to focus on testing our quirks later!
President Mike announced eagerly.
No need to tire you out at the start of the day!
But I don't expect you to be slacking off.
Eraserhead snapped.
I expelled a student who came last in these tests. If you don't beat his score, you have no business being here either.
Shinso wasn't fazed by the threat. Instead, he felt as determined as ever. And Midoriya seemed to be too. Eraserhead grinned.
On a scale of angry Midoriya to Aozora, it was high up there on the creepy factor. Shinso grinned back.
It'll help you get used to your hero costumes, too.
Eraserhead added after a moment's thought. He was about to turn when he faltered, glanced back, and added,
They're good, by the way. Simple and practical.
Midoriya snorted at Shinso as soon as their teachers turned away again.
"What?"
He hissed back.
"Nothing," Midoriya whispered, hurrying ahead of Shinso. Shinso hesitated, glancing at the softball in his hand for a moment. He smiled, but then he remembered. Earlier that day, Midoriya had mentioned thinking about quitting dance. He was back to his happy, smiling self now, but all morning so far, he'd seemed really bothered by something.
Are you coming, kid?
Shinso almost jumped, wrenched out of his thoughts by the call. He rushed forward, ready to toss the ball as far as he possibly could. He would worry about Midoriya later. Right now, both of them needed to focus on one thing and one thing only. Impressing Eraserhead. "Someone's a little distracted." Midnight grinned at Midoriya, who had just pulled himself back up off the floor with shaking arms. They'd been sparring, for lack of a better word, since lunch. That was when Shinso disappeared as he was dragged off unceremoniously by Mr. Aizawa, who had him tangled up in his capture weapon. His face, when Eraserhead complimented the simplicity of Shinso's costume, was priceless! President Mike was pretty ecstatic when he saw Midoriya's costume too, but he didn't count. He wore his leather jacket, the one with the green wings on the back, mainly because he'd gotten way too attached. Shinso swore that Midoriya almost cried. Midoriya denied it. When they sent it away to be modified slightly by an official design company, all they did was improve its fire resistance, durability, even giving it waterproofing. But that didn't stop Midoriya being absolutely relieved when it was returned in one piece. After meeting Hatsume, he wasn't sure how much he trusted support companies to stick to a memo. He could zip it up if he wanted, but often found he overheated, especially with all his dancing around. Underneath was a green top, sort of the same color as his hair and the wings. It was kind of padded, like Shinso's was, except his was purple and black. Midoriya strongly suspected both of them were developed by the same person, considering how similar they were. Other than that, he had a new and improved version of his headphones and MP3 player device thing. It was wireless this time, which saved a bit of trouble, and also a lot easier to use. Oh, and his mouthguard. By some magic that Midoriya had yet to fully understand, the entire thing was retractable and could disappear into a more compact version secured around his neck. Mr. Power Loader had said it made the guard a little weaker, but the modification was important because having such a chunky support item dangling around your neck alongside the headphones when he wasn't using them was bound to become a bit of a problem over time. Apparently, he expected Midoriya to want to change it all later on, but Midoriya had yet to find a fault with it. "Earth to Canary," Midnight sighed. "Are you okay?" "Sorry," Midoriya muttered in reply, pulling a particularly long strand of hair away from his eyes. "I was just thinking." Midnight put her hands on her hips, narrowing her eyes at him. "About what, exactly? Something more important than me?" "I'm sorry," Midoriya stuttered panickingly. "It's just..." He fiddled nervously with his headphones as his mind wandered away from his hero costume and back to the incident on Saturday. He fiddled nervously with his headphones as his mind wandered away from his hero costume and back to the incident on Sunday. "I was in dance yesterday, and it actually squealed, jumping up and down a little." Midoriya stared at her, dumbfounded. "I keep forgetting that you dance. It's so darn cute." He flushed furiously and kicked at the ground. "Yeah. Well, on Sundays I often play an instrument rather than actually dance." Midoriya ignored Midnight's excitement over that this time. "And I ended up playing this song. But then, well, I made it rain inside." Midnight had stopped acting so over-enthusiastic. A concerned look spread over her face as she walked a little closer to him.
It was fine. I stopped before anything really bad happened. But it made me think. What if I'd been singing something with a power that... What if I hurt someone?
Midnight gave him a meek smile, patting him tentatively on the head.
Many people with powerful quirks face problems like that, she explained. You worry about making a mistake, activating it unintentionally. I used to worry a lot about sending not just the villain, but civilians unconscious too with my quirk.
No, Midoriya sighed, stepping away from her.
Well, yeah, that's a problem too. But I mean, there are songs out there, a lot of songs, that I can never, ever sing.
Silence fell between them for a moment as they each followed their own train of thought. Midnight had taken over in Midoriya's training from a string of other teachers earlier that morning. He'd seen Mr. Aizawa, of course, and he and Shinso somehow survived his endless physical tests. Then President Mike, who forced them to do vocal exercises, which mortified both of them. But what Midoriya was currently flashing back to was his earlier training with Cementas. They'd been testing his quirk's more destructive capabilities against the hero's constructive power. With everything that Midoriya could do to cement, what could he do to people?
You know, Midnight began. Midoriya narrowed his eyes at her when a worryingly wide smile stretched across her face.
There are an awful lot of songs about love.
No! Midoriya said immediately. No!
Yes, she shrieked. Oh, you are too perfect. There's no way I'm letting Mike keep you all to himself.
There's no way I am ever singing a love song!
Oh, I can't wait until Friday. You and your friend are stuck with me then.
Midoriya silently prayed Friday could somehow be skipped altogether. Looking back, only one thought crossed Midoriya's mind.
Careful what you wish for. Songs used in this chapter. Africa by Toto.